Hello everybody and welcome back to Plant Boy. My name is Cade and today we are going to be talking about how to fill out the headspace of your vining plants to make them appear more bushy. As requested by this user here, they asked this on my Neon Pothos Care Guide video, so let's talk about how to make that happen. Before we get into this, I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking by the channel and continuing your support, especially while this uploading is rather infrequent, definitely not as frequent as I would like it to be. We will get into the reasons why someday, but for today we are going to keep it light and talk about some plants. So let's get into this. So as you can see, this golden pothos plant has very long vines on it. It's getting rather long, and I guess we could call this leggy, meaning that the vines are getting really long, but there's not a lot of kind of bushiness up here at the top. There's a lot of barren soil still being shown. Versus like this neon pothos over here looks much bushier, and the vines aren't quite as long, but I mean, you can definitely see the difference. So let's talk about how to achieve this very bushy look and what you can do with a plant that is looking a little leggy and how to fill it out more. So we are going to talk about 3 different ways that you can achieve this more bushy appearance. Number 1 will be pruning. Number 2 will be propagating via cuttings and filling in the pot. And number 3 will just be looping those vines back into your pot and establishing the aerial roots. So there will be time codes linked below if you would like to see any one of those, and let's get into it. So the first way that you can achieve a more bushy appearance is by cutting back some of these longer vines and just pruning them with clean shears. So we have this very long vine here. You know, I could just prune it simply at the end here if I want to preserve a lot of this vine. And what that's going to do is basically tell the plant that something has happened here, and it will send more chemical signals to stimulate growth at the top of the vine rather than continuing to push out more growth at the end of the vine there. This will not stop all of the growth at the end of the vine, but it will definitely promote growth elsewhere in your pot. So that is definitely a good way to promote growth at the top of your plants if your vines are getting a little too long. The next way that we can fill out the top of these pots has to do with pruning as well. So this kind of gets 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. So if we were to prune one of these longer vines and propagate the plant, we would then have either water-rooted cuttings or soil-rooted cuttings that can be placed back into this mother pot to use to fill out and like give it more of a bushy appearance. So if you're interested in how to propagate, I have several pothos propagation videos. I have a golden pothos propagation and a marble queen pothos propagation, and probably a philodendron one I think is in the Brazil philodendron care guide, all of which will be linked below, but you're going to propagate these all in the same way. So I do have some golden pothos cuttings here. These were all cuttings that were taken about a month and a half ago, placed in water until they had a 2-inch root growth, and then they were placed into a well-draining soil mix and kept moist until the roots established themselves. And this leaf here, all of those are new leaves that these cuttings are starting to push out because they have that node formation on there. I could definitely just leave this plant as is. However, I am going to disassemble this plant and take out each one of those cuttings and place it back into the mother pot here. If you just want to put your water-rooted cuttings directly into your pot, you could absolutely do so. Just for filming content, I had a pot with me video for this one, and it wouldn't necessarily hurt to kind of ease these guys into a soil medium and keep them in their own separate container so you can keep them a little bit more moist to help them acclimate from that water, and then go into your mother plant that you allow to dry out as you should. So I'm going to take each of these cuttings and place them throughout my mother plant here. And as we can see, these guys definitely need repotted. We have quite a bit of root growth there on the bottom of the pot. So I'm going to just do my best here to not disturb any of the root formation, but we will see. So change of plans. This root ball is actually very difficult to break apart because it's so woven together. So I'm actually just going to find a bare spot in here. So, I mean, you could definitely cluster your plants together like I did and fill it out into like a larger space, or you can just take those individual cuttings and place them wherever you see fit. But simply because I don't want to damage these roots and I don't want to stress the plant out any further, I'm just going to place these in here. And this should help quite a bit, actually. All right, everyone, so I put those cuttings into here just as one large ball. I was able to separate one cutting without doing any damage to the roots, so just do your best, you get the point. But you can see that that has already made quite a large bit of difference, especially towards the front there. This is where I put it. So you can see that this is going to get much bushier, much fuller looking, and there will just be more and more growth pushing out of here over time. Something else to note with your bushier plants is that make sure you're getting enough light on the top of your plant. If you're not, I tend to notice that yellowing leaves can happen, especially if a plant gets a little too full and a little too bushy. Say there's a few smaller leaves down underneath this like canopy of larger foliage here. I wouldn't be surprised and I would not be concerned if those smaller leaves underneath there that aren't getting a lot of light turn yellow and die back. That way the plant can put its energy into, you know, the leaves that are getting more sunlight. All right, everyone, so the last way that I'm going to mention you fill out your bushy plants is going to be helpful to understand if you understand what a node is. A node is basically where the petiole or the stem of the leaf comes from. That helps form a new leaf, and that is what you are going to propagate from. And this little black nub here, that node, is going to be where those roots come out whenever we propagate. So knowing what we know then, this last method involves taking the long vine that you do not want to be hanging down over your plant and wrapping it around into your soil onto the bed of your plant, making sure that those nodes have contact with the soil, and that way there will be chemical signals sent to the node saying I'm moist and I can now put energy into root growth, and those roots will grow from those nodes down into the soil medium and establish themselves, and you will get a fuller, more bushy appearance. So I'm just going to take this stem and wrap it around the top of my plant here. I'm actually going to make sure that I get underneath some of these larger other vines and this other foliage. That way I can make sure, like I said, that vine is making contact with the surface of the soil and making sure those nodes are being placed down onto the face of the soil to ensure that those roots are going to establish themselves into the plant. Okay, and as you can see, I have wrapped that vine around into the base of the plant here, and I am taking special attention to note that the nodes are in contact with that soil. Something like a plant spike, which is going to be kind of in the shape of like a staple that you can put over top of that vine down into the soil to anchor it into place to make sure that node stays in contact with the soil, would do well. You can also choose to top dress this with extra soil and kind of use that top layer of soil to cover up that vine and that stem to make sure that those nodes are in contact with the soil as well. And over a period of time, you will note that that vine is having root growth down into the soil, and it will establish itself in there and it won't be loose anymore. So I think that this is certainly a more bushy appearing plant than the one that we began with. Again, like I said, I'm going to make sure that I'm providing this guy with ample amount of light, especially to the top of its surface. So I hope that you guys all found this helpful, and I hope that this has answered some questions about how to achieve a bushier looking plant. Just to recap, we have 3 different methods. That would be pruning your long vines to promote growth at the top of the plant. Number 2 being propagation via water or soil, and then transplanting them into the mother plant. And you can actually just take cuttings and stick them right back into the top of the soil, but it may be less successful in terms of success rate of live to die ratio of those leaves that you propagate. I found that water propagation is the most reliable way, especially for the golden pothos. And the last way is to loop those vines back around into your soil, making sure those nodes are being exposed to soil, and those will eventually root and establish themselves, and then you have a bushier appearing plant. So thank you all again for the support and everything. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you found this video helpful. I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.